Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another video here on the channel. For those who don't know me, my name is Júlio, and in today's case, I'm talking about Herbert Mullin, a serial killer who used to kill, according to himself, to avoid earthquakes. So, let's go to the video. Herbert Mullin was born on April 18, 1947 in Salinas, a city in the state of California. At the age of 5, he moved with his family to the city of Santa Cruz, which is also in the state of California. His father, known as Bill Mullin, was a World War II veteran who worked as a furniture salesman to support his family. He taught Mullin how to use a weapon and told him countless stories about the war. Bill was a very strict father about raising his children, but he was not an abusive father. Mullin was popular at school. As well as being a good student, he was also a good athlete, had many friends, and a girlfriend. He was also the top voted student in school who had the greatest propensity to become a successful person among other students. Unlike most of serial killers, Mullin did not have a traumatic childhood or adolescence that could be the reason or explanation for his criminal personality. In 1965, at the age of 18, he graduated and thought of joining the armed forces to follow his father's career. However, he chose to study engineering. At the same time, Mullin's best friend, Dean Richardson, ends up in a car accident where he dies. Mullin was devastated and his behavior changed completely. He began to build several shrines dedicated to his friend, including one in his own room. At the same time, he started to move away from the closest people, spending several hours of the day alone. He became obsessed with the reincarnation, believing that if it were possible, he would one day find his best friend. He then decided to change his course from engineering to philosophy, when he independently began to study various religions of Eastern origin. Later, he came to believe that his best friend's death had been part of a great cosmic plan. Experts who studied Mullin said this phase of his life played a big role in his criminal personality. FBI special agent Robert Ressler, who was a part of the behavioral science unit, concluded that Mullin had paranoid schizophrenia, manifesting in his teens, and that the condition was aggravated by his constant use of psychoactive drugs such as LSD and marijuana. In 1968, aged 21, Mullin broke up with his girlfriend after she said she suspected he was a homosexual. The following year, he accepted his family's recommendation to be admitted to the Mendocino Psychiatric Hospital, but he didn't like it and left a few months later without completing the treatment. Over the next few years, Mullin wandered around the state of California. He did some work in order to survive and went through many mental institutions. Mullin tried to be a boxer, but was expelled and prevented from participating in new fights for not respecting the rules and being too aggressive. When his opponent fell, he kept hitting him on the ground, even though the referee asked him to stop. He was totally aimless, and to find himself, he tried countless lifestyles. He practiced yoga, meditation, macrobiotic diets, and even tried to become a priest. From the latter, he was expelled because it was discovered that he was constantly using drugs such as LSD and marijuana, when he began to hallucinate and yell at people who weren't really there, throwing objects in the air to try to hit them. In 1972, at the age 25, Mullin returned to live with his parents in the city of Felton in the state of California. By this time, he was hallucinating strongly, even hearing voices about an impending earthquake that would destroy all of California, and that could only be avoided by sacrificing human lives. Mullin began to believe in these voices, creating random links that somehow might have an explanation. One of them was the fact that Mullin was born on April 18, which is the same date that one of the biggest earthquakes in the United States occurred in the year 1906. This earthquake became known as the San Francisco earthquake that devastated the city, causing the death of more than 3,000 people. He considered that this date was not a mere coincidence, but in fact that it had a special meaning. Mullin also believed that the Vietnam War had helped prevent earthquakes because of the large number of American soldiers who had died there, kind of like a blood sacrifice to nature. But with the withdrawal of the American troops in 1972, he believed he should start killing so that sacrifices would continue and earthquakes would not wake up. On October 13, 1972, Mullin was driving down a road in Santa Cruz when he spotted Lawrence White, a 55-year-old homeless man. Mullin then stopped the car a few meters ahead, pretending that his vehicle had some mechanical trouble. Lawrence offered to help him, and when he got distracted, opening the hood to look at the engine, Mullin attacked him with a baseball bat, beating him to death. After that, Mullin dragged the body into the woods. Lawrence's body was found the next day by police. Years later, Mullin told the police that Lawrence was actually Jonah from the Bible, and that he had telepathically sent him a message to kill in order to save others. On October 24, 1972, Mullin offered a ride to Mary Guilfoyle, a 24-year-old college student who was late for a job interview. Mary accepted the ride. Mullin drove off for a few miles until he veered off course, stopped the car, and started stabbing the girl. He landed several blows on the chest and the back. Then he dissected the body and scattered the remains across the road on the slope. What was left off of Mary's body was only found on February 11, 1973, almost 4 months later. On November 2, 1972, Mullin went to confess his sins at St. Mary's Catholic Church in Los Gatos County, California. The person in charge of the church was Father Henry Tomei, 67 years old. He was a veteran of the French Resistance who fought the Nazi occupation of France, and with the end of the war, he migrated to the US to follow his priesthood. Mullin and Henry enter the confessional. Mullin begins to confess all his crimes, even telling his motives. Before Henry can say anything, Mullin surprises him and starts hitting him. After that, he takes a knife and stabs him several times. Mullin quickly flees, while Henry bleeds to death inside the confessional. One parishioner did see Mullin fleeing, but the description he gave the police of a tall young man in dark trousers and boots didn't help much, and the police eventually concluded that Father Henry had been the victim of a robbery. In one of his testimonies years later, Mullin said that the priest volunteered to be sacrificed in order to avoid the earthquakes. On January 15, 1973, a few months after the murders, Mullin enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps. He even passed physical and psychiatric tests, but when they discovered he was a drug addict and had already been committed to various mental institutions, he was rejected. This rejection began to fuel paranoid illusions of possible conspiracies against him. Mullin believed that a powerful group of hippies was behind big plans to harm him. He then quits drugs and starts blaming them for his problems as well. Mullin buys several weapons and decides to kill Jim Ganera, a high school classmate who had sold him drugs for the first time, blaming him for his drug addiction and the struggles he had in his life because of it. On January 25, 1973, Mullin decides to go to Jim's house. Arriving there, he finds that Jim has moved out. Who lived in the house now was Kathy Francis, an old friend of Jim's. Kathy was alone in the house along with her 2 children, 9-year-old Damon Francis and 4-year-old David Hughes. She gives Jim's new address to Mullin. He thanks her, goes to his car, grabs a gun, and then returns to the house where he shoots Kathy and her 2 children in the head. After that, Mullin goes to Santa Cruz, where Jim was living. Once there, Mullin kills Jim and his wife with headshots. After that, he takes a knife and stabs the bodies over and over again. The police thought the 5 murders were linked to a dispute between drug dealers, as Jim and Kathy Francis' husband were involved in drug dealing. Because of that, Mullin was not considered a suspect, getting away again. On February 10, 1973, less than a month later, Mullin was walking through Henry Cowell State Park, where he found 4 teenagers camped illegally in the park. He walked over to them and started a brief conversation, telling to be a ranger. Mullin ordered them to leave, claiming that they were polluting the forest, but they refused to do it. He then drew his gun and shot them one by one, killing all 4. He then hid the bodies that were not found until a week later. Sometime later, Mullin claimed that he spoke to these teenagers by telepathy and that they would have given him permission to kill them. On February 13, 1973, just 3 days later, Mullin was driving through the west side of Santa Cruz when he passed by Fred Perez, a retired fisherman who was in front of his house mowing the lawn. For no reason, Mullin backed up, grabbed the rifle that he placed on the hood so he could aim, and shot Fred in the heart, killing him instantly. Mullin enters the vehicle and leaves without any hurry. As it was during the day, there were several people close to the crime scene. One of these people wrote down the license plate of the vehicle Mullin was in and then passed it on to the police. A few minutes later, Mullin was captured by the police on a highway. The police were prepared for a possible confrontation, as the rifle Mullin used in the murder was in full view on the passenger seat. However, Mullin ended up surrendering without any resistance. At the police station, Mullin confesses to all his crimes and said he acted on the orders of voices in his head, who ordered him to kill people to prevent earthquakes. He even claimed that the fact that there had been no earthquakes recently was thanks to him. Coincidentally, 8 days after his arrest, a magnitude 5.8 earthquake occurred in Southern California, causing damage estimated at more than 1 million. Mullin obviously didn't miss the opportunity to say he was right all along. On December 11, 1973, Mullin is tried, but he pleads guilty to all the murders. In this way, the trial focused on whether he should answer for his crimes like a normal person or whether he should be kept in a psychiatric center. The defense argued that Mullin had a history of mental illness and suffered from schizophrenia. The prosecution argued that there was premeditation in some of his crimes, as in the case of the murder of Kathy Francis and her children, as he knew that if they left them alive, they would know that he was the one who killed Jim, since it was Kathy that gave him the address. The judge does not accept the defense's argument, and Mullin is then sentenced to life imprisonment. Now, at the age 73, he is serving his sentence in Mule Creek State Prison in Ione, California. He has had more than 15 parole requests denied for failing the psychiatrist assessment. Mullin has already shared the same wing with 2 other famous serial killers, one of them being Edmund Kemper. I have a video about him here on the channel. If you haven't seen it, watch it here, it is very good. The other one is Charles Manson. This one I haven't made a video about, but I plan to do it soon. Well guys, this is the end of another video here on the channel. Thank you so much for watching this far, best wishes, and I'll see you next time.